If rest ever felt like something you had to earn, this episode is for you. Welcome back to a Dream Life season. We are on episode 9, and today we are talking all about rest. And apparently, I have a friend who's going to help me. Say hello, Circus Kitty. Okay, so we are going to talk all about rest today. So, we are going to talk about how rest equals alignment. We're going to talk about the different kinds of rest, how to help your family understand the different kinds of rest, and hacks to help you increase rest time. So let's get into our Fantastic 15. All right, welcome to Fantastic 15. Today I want to start our gratitude section by talking about what things are we grateful for where we have been able to rest, right? What things have we been able to say no to that have allowed us to rest? What things have we been able to move around? Or what times have we rested and then been able to still get stuff done? Being grateful for that will help us to open up our mind to rest. Because for a lot of us, as neurodivergent people, we have a hard time with rest because I think a lot of us feel like we are being lazy. We feel like we're not getting enough done. So, because of that, we tend to push and push and push and not rest. So, we need to remind ourselves that good things happen when we rest. Rest is a requirement, not a reward. And let's get into, we're going to do our deep breathing video, and then we will get into some inspiration in just a second. Okay, welcome back. We are talking about rest. And one of the things that I want you to consider, and we're going to talk about cycles tomorrow and getting into a cycle so that you can rest. And I want you to start thinking about that now, because that is really one of the ways that we can help ourselves to get more done, right? Is by showing up fully rested. And a lot of times we can get more done fully rested in a few hours than we can in a day if we are tired and not running all, on all cylinders, right? So resting is never a bad thing. And I want everybody to really dig down deep and think about the times when they've rested and things have worked out. When they've rested and you were able to, maybe you delegated something, maybe you decided that you were gonna, not do something and it all turned out okay. Because a lot of times I think we tend to think that the worst of the worst is going to happen if we don't do what we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. This show is one of those examples because I have consistently put out videos every week. However, I've not been consistent in putting out videos every single day. And so because of that, there was a version of myself back in the day that would have been very upset, that probably would have given up by now. We are not giving up though. We are not giving up. We are playing catch up right now, obviously, but we are not giving up. We are going through this. We are doing the thing. And my goodness, I have a key cat that just, Circus Kitty, what are you doing? Oh my, she needs love, I think. So anyway, that is just a very quick inspirational moment for you, right? Because I do truly feel like the more we talk about rest, it's almost like we're going to talk about rest, we're going to break it down, we're going to do the things, but I want to keep this episode short so you have time to rest, right? All right. Let's get into the Move Your Body segment. Welcome to the Move Your Body section. So we're going to start out with some neck rolls, big rolls. Make sure you're breathing while you're doing this. All right. Another big roll. Now we're going to go the opposite way. Big rolls. That's 2. And we're going to do 3 and 4 and 5. All right, now we're going to do shrug shoulders and drop them. Shrug your shoulders up and drop them. All right, shrug your shoulders up, relax. Shrug your shoulders up, relax again. All right, one more time. All right, now we're going to stretch up. Wiggle those fingers, stretch up as high as you can, and down. And we're going to do that again. Stretch, 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 and down. And stretch, 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 up, up, high, high, and down. All right, stretch up one more time and down. One last time. We're gonna stretch, 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 and down. All right, now we're gonna stretch up and we're gonna go to the right and then to the center and then to the left and then back to the center. And we're gonna repeat and go to the right and then the center and then stretch to the left and then back to the center and then down to touch your toes. Hold it there, hold it there, hold it there. All right, roll it back up. Shake it out, shake it out, shake it out. On to the next segment. Welcome back to the Fun with Food segment. Today, I want to talk about some easy ways to help us to be able to still feed our families, still feed ourselves, still do the things, but also things that can help us rest as well, right? So we talk about it often on here that there are like TV dinners and there's soup and there's making sandwiches or buying already done salads or salad kits. So all you have to do is throw everything together, mix it up and call it a day. And I love those ideas. I think that there's a lot of help that those can give us. I also want to talk about doing a little bit of meal prepping, okay? And when I say meal prepping, I mean that maybe once in a while, you need to take a little bit of time and a little bit of money and make most of, if not all of, a recipe that then just goes in the freezer so that you can reheat it later. Or if it's, like lasagna can be made in advance and then put in the freezer and you just take it out and heat it up, things like that, where we're either going to buy stuff, right? If you're not one who feels like you can make it, then I would say keep something like a frozen lasagna, something like maybe some grilled chicken nuggets or grilled chicken strips in the freezer. We always have chicken nuggets, regular chicken nuggets here. But having some grilled gives you a better option for like dinners to make a quick wrap, to add to salads, things like that. And just having that there, right? Just having those options means on days when you are low energy and really need to rest, you can do that. And that is a very important part of rest, is knowing that things are taken care of so that you can. Because if you're supposed to rest, but you also know that 15 things aren't done that you're supposed to be doing, and you're the only one you feel like that can do them, and you start to get frustrated about all that stuff, it can be very difficult to rest. And you can feel like you're unable to rest. So allowing yourself to have those things that you can pull out when you need to, and then just make a note to restock, right? Whether that's restocking with the same things or, changing it up, restock with something different next time, do a rotation. A lot of times I try to keep easy things for my kids to do as well. So that is your very short, we're keeping this short today. That is your short in the kitchen or fun with food segment. What are some options? What are some things that you keep? Maybe you already keep these things around the house, right? Or maybe you buy them for a weekly grocery thing. Like, every now and again we buy a lasagna just because we want lasagna and it's yummy. So what are some things that you can be like, oh, next time lasagna is on sale, I'm just going to pick an extra one up and then we're just going to keep it in the freezer, keep it ready to go. Let me know, drop those in the comments, and let's move on to our first ring. Well, welcome to the first ring. We are talking all about rest. And there are different kinds of rest that we need. And sometimes I think it's difficult because we don't know how to communicate. Maybe we were never taught. A lot of our kids have never been taught how to communicate what they need, right? As far as rest is concerned. A lot of times we hear the word rest, we think it means sleep. We hear the word rest, we think it means lay in bed and read a book or lay in bed and watch TV. And that's the only, that's rest, right? What else is rest? There are so many other definitions or parts of rest, right? There's micro rest where you're just resting for a little bit. You're taking your brain off of whatever you're doing. You're relaxing and not, if you're doing physical work, you're stopping, resting. We do that a lot when you're doing like circuit training and things like that, where you're going really, really fast, really hard and heavy. And then like you take a 30-second break to kind of regulate your heartbeat and stuff before you go back in and hit it again. And those kinds of things, like that's all rest, right? That is all rest. Micro rest, when it comes to, sometimes you just need like a brain break. Sometimes you need to stare into like outside or something for a couple of minutes and let your brain just kind of wander for a minute. And then you can pull it back and you're like, okay, I can concentrate again for a little bit. Those are some things that sometimes we need, right? Sometimes we need sensory rest. So if we are constantly listening to things, constantly watching things, if we're burning lots of candles or have lots of smells, if we have like heat and cold are things that we can need rest from sensory wise, right? We can get to a place where we're like, okay, like I've had all the heat I can take. I need to cool off. I need it to be like a baseline temperature here. And the same goes with cold, right? Sometimes you're just like, all right, I need to go warm up. I need to be at a normal temperature, right? And those are things that we need rest from. And sometimes like we don't think about it, but that can be not as much the cold, I don't think, because I think most of us will not force ourselves to be out in that if we don't have to. But when it comes to heat, a lot of times we will be like, oh, it's not that hot, I don't want to turn the air conditioner on yet. We won't do the things we need to do, like keeping ourselves hydrated, taking a shower, a cool shower if you need to get your body temperature back to where it needs. And with neurodivergent individuals, a lot of times it can, there's lots of comorbidities that go with that. And some people have a hard time regulating their own body temperature. Some people have a hard time, with the like sensory input altogether, or they crave more or they need less. And sometimes it's both. Sometimes we need more of this and less of that, right? So having that like knowledge, at least the awareness to be able to move forward and do the things that we need to do then to help regulate ourselves, to give our body, our brains, whatever it is, whichever one it is, rest so that we can calm down and get back to that just right space to where we can function. So there's that. There's emotional, mental, and physical rest, right? So sometimes you need, I don't know if you guys have ever done this. I think every female on the planet probably has. If you haven't, let me know. Um, and if you have, let me know what your go-to is. A lot of times I think as women, we will put on either a sappy video or like a rom-com, something like that, because we need to take ourselves out of our own situation and put ourselves into somebody else's so that we can like get a break from our own stuff, get some rest from our own problems, feel something through somebody else's eyes, and I feel like that's something that we do where we're regulating ourselves and we don't even realize it. So that is, your emotional part of your emotional rest. There are times when I absolutely know that I need to release and I need to cry. And I have, for the longest time, being a single mom that is single the way that I am single, it can be difficult. I have kind of not pushed crying away. I do it, but I try to find the right times to do it. And so sometimes it can be difficult to get myself to do that because it'll feel like it's the wrong time and I'll kind of not be able to. And so there's certain movies that I know I can watch. The Fault in Our Stars is one of them that will instantly start the waterworks at a certain point, right? And I can get that release and I can then feel that relief and like, okay, we've gotten the rest that we needed from getting all of that out, because it's work when you are masking, when you are holding it back, when you are keeping that stuff from coming out. And this is part of it, is that we are, I think as kids, a lot of times we had trouble regulating our emotions. And so we worked really hard to do the things that people wanted us to do to regulate them. And so now we can be really good at keeping our emotions back. We can be really good at putting the wall up, at, not feeling things, because we've had years and years to practice it, years and years to get good at doing this thing that people say they want us to do. And then when it comes time that we need to for our own good, it can feel counterintuitive. It can feel like, well, if it's so bad, why do I need to do it? And we can not want to let go. And so once we do finally let go, there's like a whole other feeling that comes over you, right? Because now you've let go of that thing. You don't have to do the work to put the mask on, to hold back, to push that thing down there and not pay attention to it. So, and then mental rest. Sometimes your brain craves stimulation. Like, I need to do a crossword puzzle. I need to do something where my brain is actively thinking and working on something. And sometimes I've been problem solving. I've been working through things. I've done so much at this point. Like, I need to do something that's mindless. I need to play a game where I don't have to think. I need to watch a movie where I don't have to think about it. Another good way to help that is to watch one of those movies where you know pretty much every word, you already know what's going to happen. You don't have to think about it, because in those moments, like if you have to try to follow a movie and figure out what's going on and whatever, you're engaging your brain. And that can help when you need to engage your brain, when your brain is saying, okay, like we need some stimulation here, we're bored, we need something. But if you're on the flip side of that, and what you really need is a break, watching a movie or listening to music, or, just relaxing, right? Daydreaming, those are all really good things to give your brain that break. And when I say daydreaming, I mean like the best case possible scenario of a day, right? Not how am I going to fix this problem? That's not daydreaming, that's problem solving, and that is not going to, it's not rest, that's work. All right, so what are some ways that you already rest? And were there any ideas that I brought through, any things that I thought of that I said that you're like, oh, that's a good idea? Drop those in the comments, and we are going to move on to the center ring. Welcome back to the center ring. Today, we are talking about figuring out what kind of rest you actually need. Okay, so again, I'll say it. I just said it a minute ago, but I will say it again. A lot of times when we think of rest, we think of actual sleeping, we think of laying there watching TV or something. But again, there are lots of different, and we just talked about all the different ways, right, in the last segment. So, how do you know what kind of rest you need? Well, sometimes it's very obvious, okay? Sometimes it's like, I'm not physically tired, but I've been working on and thinking about stuff, and kind of my brain has been on overdrive working on things, and I know I need mental rest. Sometimes it is very physical, right? I haven't slept. I, worked out really hard today. I've done a lot today. I've been very productive. I know I need sleep. Sometimes it's not so easy to figure out, okay? Because sometimes what our brain is craving is stimulation from something that isn't problem solving. Okay, so sometimes our brain's like, ooh, let me problem solve. Let me do this Sudoku. Let me do this crossword puzzle, and we're good with that. And sometimes for some people that can even help if you're craving stimulation, as long as you haven't really burned yourself out on problem solving things. But sometimes we need creativity, okay? And so this is another area that I don't tend to talk about this as much with kids, because I feel like kids are naturally creative. They're naturally always creating things. I tend to talk more to parents about this because we as parents don't necessarily create as much, because we feel like that's frivolous and there's no reason to do that. And, we have real problems that need real solutions, and imagining things isn't going to help, or okay, what's it going to help if I draw a picture or if I paint or singing or whatever? Like, none of that's going to actually help. I need something that's going to help, or I'm just going to sit there and not be able to, I'm going to be worried the whole time. And I think that's the point that kids have that we as adults have had trained out of us, which is a kid can have a problem and they learn at a young age. Usually they learn how to start solving problems and problem solving. But sometimes when it's a problem that they can't solve and they're young enough to still be in that space, they'll just go do something else. They'll just go ignore it because eventually it'll work itself out. And if it doesn't, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I'm not going to sit here and be unhappy and think about it all the time when I can do all these things that can make me happy. And I think that that's part of the missing link that we have as adults in how to help ourselves have the life that we want, right? There are things that you can do right now that will make you happy the same way having all of that money would make you happy. Okay. And I want you to really think about that for a minute. There are things that you can do that will make you that happy, maybe even happier, because it's a happiness that comes from creating something, from giving, from doing something you enjoy versus a happiness of getting something that's eventually not going to be there anymore. And I want you to keep remembering that, like, that is the key to everything, is that nothing lasts. And when I say nothing lasts, I don't mean like, okay, like you're going to get $1 million and then it's all going to be gone 5 minutes later. Like, no. But in the scheme of things, why people who have money is because just as much as they're spending, they're also bringing in. And so when they're taking the money that they have and they're using that money to figure out a way to make more money, then they're able to kind of keep doing that. But it's not that $1 million that sat in the bank that just isn't getting touched. It's being cycled through. And I think a lot of times we have that scarcity mentality in a way of, if I have extra money, if I have this money that I feel like I need, I don't want to let go of it because I don't know when more is going to come. And creativity can really be that missing link between, how do I take what I have now and make more with it? Or how do I take the talents that I've been given and use those to create money that was never there to begin with, right? It's not like I'm investing this money into something else to make more money at that point. It's like I'm using my talents, right? If you think about it, yes, there sometimes is a cost to doing something like singing if you're going to get professional equipment and stuff. But you could go out on a street corner, throw a hat down, and sing if you have a good voice, and people are going to pay you for your, if you go into places where people will do that, once you make an investment, maybe you already have a guitar. Once you have certain things that are already investments, like, that's not taking from that pile, right? And so I want you to start thinking about this idea of creativity as rest, because, and this is what we were working on with the moonlit creator experiment, is how can I use creativity to reignite, to to fill my cup back up when I'm drained from having to do stuff in a way that maybe it's not that I don't want to do, but it could be boring, it could be mundane, it could be the same thing every single day, right? And I want to just give you a little piece here of this. If I am working on doing something that feels like it is something lasting, okay? Something that is going to, I don't know if we'll say legacy, but it is going to last, such as Dream Life season, right? If I am working on that and I need to hit the same areas every day in order for that to feel cohesive and like it's actually a program, right? It's actually a show versus just being all over the place and doing random videos, right? We can do random videos on YouTube and that's fine, but that does not make it a show. A show denotes that there is a structure to it, that, even if it's like a sitcom, right? And you have a plot and your characters are developing and things are never the same every day. The same characters are in play, the same dynamics, right? They don't change and be like, okay, all of a sudden this person is the daughter and this person's the mom when last week it was the opposite, right? They don't do that. They come in and there's a structure to it. So sometimes that structure is what we need for that particular thing. But then we also need to add some creativity into things. And that can be adding something on top, right? That doesn't have to be, I'm trying to make this show the same, but different and creative and whatever. I can add that in, but I don't have to. I can just add creativity in other ways. I can sing, I can paint, I can draw, I can create other content in other ways that then gives me what I need, fills me up, does that, so that I have more energy to give into the thing that is long lasting and needs the structure. And when we can feed our own cycles like that, when we realize the need for rest, and we are going to talk about the cycles tomorrow, but when we realize like how that goes and how we're always going to need to come back to the rest, that's a need. That's a requirement if we're going to continue to do that which we want to do. And so, whether that's to our family, whether that's to, a business or a volunteer organization, whether that's just in our own homes, right? We need to add some creativity to help us stir some things up, to help us fill ourselves back up, to get that feeling where it's like, okay, we're here, we're good. Now I can have more energy to give. So I want you to start thinking about what kind of rest you really need. If you are not getting your proper amount of sleep, you probably do need physical rest. If you are feeling burned out because you feel like things are mundane and you're doing the same thing over and over again, you probably need to add some creativity and have some creative rest, right? Where you're actually doing something creative, but it is allowing you to rest. It's allowing your mental state to rest. It's allowing, your emotions to kind of rest, where you're getting yourself excited versus just staying in that mundane state. So drop in the comments, let me know what kind of rest you need. If it's more than one, let me know that too. And let's move over to our third ring today. Welcome to the third ring. We are talking about ways to either get ahead or hack your business so that you can take a day to rest. You can take time to rest, right? So the first thing that we need to talk about is knowing what kind of rest you need and how that is going to affect what you're doing. So maybe if it's creative rest that you need, like what we just talked about, then maybe the idea isn't that it affects your business much. It's just, okay, I need to schedule my more creative stuff after my more mundane stuff so that I'm filling myself back up so I can do more mundane stuff. And you can schedule things in a way that's like, okay, I'm going to do this post or this video, or I'm going to, make this email or whatever. And then I'm going to do this fun, creative thing that I need to do. And then I'm going to do another more mundane thing. And you can actually flip flop them like that back and forth so that you are giving yourself as much energy as you can during that day and you can get the most out of a day. If you have a couple of days, if you are, and we're going to talk about, again, we're going to talk about cycles and routines and flow tomorrow. But if you are anything like me and you already know, like I can have a high energy day and then I'm going to have like a medium and then I'm going to have a low. And if I try to make day one and day two both high, then I'm going to have a low and maybe a medium before I can hit a high again. And so because of that, I want you to start thinking about how you can schedule your stuff so that you are getting time off, so you are getting a break, so that you are doing all of that stuff. Because if we schedule it in already, one, it's going to happen more often than not. Two, we aren't just leaving it up to chance, because a lot of times if we say, oh, well, I'll just go until I feel like I really need a break. And then when I feel like I really need a break, I'll take a break and then we'll get back into it. But how often, when you feel like you really need a break, do you actually take a break? Or do you a lot of times push yourself a little bit? Oh, I can do a little bit more. Oh, I'm almost done with this day's worth of work. I'll rest tomorrow. And then you wake up in the morning the next day and you're like, I know I'm supposed to rest, but I can get all of these things done and then I can rest. But then you're at half capacity and you're not going to get all of those things done. And then it just creates this snowball effect of incomplete work, things that get dropped, not having your whole heart and your whole brain in doing things when you're doing them. And so when we come from that place, when we're doing that, it can be very difficult, especially if we're doing creative work. If we're a creator, if we are creating content, and the energy that you're getting when you're watching a video feels like that person needs a nap, there's a good chance you might watch it if you really want to hear what the person has to say, or if you're really interested in what they're doing. But if you are on the fence, if you're new, if you are one of those people who watches like on good days or when there's fun things, you might turn it off and go find something else. And you're not helping your cause. Okay, you are not helping your cause when you are trying to do too much too fast. You're not resting, your energy isn't up, you want people to see your stuff, or you want, maybe you're wanting brands to pick you up or different things like that, and people are just not, you're not going to get the results you want. It's better if you take the time to rest, you come back, you're full of energy, you're able to do the thing, and then you just regularly take those breaks. And that can be so hard for us, okay? That can be so hard for us to kind of wrap our brains around the fact that we actually do need to rest, that we actually do need those moments of, and it's not just physical rest. It's not just sleep, right? Sleep is a part of it, but it's not just sleep. It's sleep. It's, having the right amount of stimulation. It's having the right amount of downtime for your brain. It's having your emotions regulated. It's having your nervous system regulated. All of that go into play to help us. So, what are some things that we can do to help us when we feel like everything's unraveling and we're all over the place, right? Maybe we know we need a break. We know we need to take a day off. So, one thing that I think is very helpful for people when they're just starting out, or when they are, before you really have a plan in place, but you still need to rest, is to just give yourself the permission to do so. Now, that, can look like all kinds of different things, right? That could look like taking a day off. That could look like working half a day and then taking the rest of the day off. That can look like a lot of things. And when we are homemakers and, taking care of family and home on top of business or a job, that can feel a lot different, because we can feel like, okay, maybe I'm going to take a day off my job, but I can't take a day off my home. I can't take a day off homeschooling. I can't take a day off of doing homework with my kids. I can't take a day off of cooking and, doing that kind of stuff. And so that is why we're going to start to work. We're building this foundation to be the fine oiled machine that, because we continue to do these things, everything continues to flow. Okay. So if I am doing all of the things that I can possibly do, and yes, there are, I won't call them limitations, but there are choices that we have to make. Okay. So maybe one of the choices that we have to make is, usually I buy all of my food fresh and make all my food from scratch, because I save that money and I put that money into other things. And so maybe we're going to have to decide if we want to do this other thing, right? If cooking and, doing that is not the only thing in our life that we want to do, then maybe we have to decide, can I cut back some, right? Can I buy some pre-made stuff, or can I cut back on some to spend a little bit of money, like to get extra, right? I'm not going to get, and this is something where it's a very personal choice. I cannot make this choice for you. Everybody has their own values on things. I am not a makeup girly. I have skincare obviously, but I do not go out and spend a ton of money on it. I'll be honest with you, TikTok Shop has been a lifesaver because I have gotten so much free skincare. I probably have enough skincare for the rest of 2026 now. And because of that, like that helps, right? But I've never been the type to spend a bunch of money on that kind of stuff. And so therefore that money that other people choose to spend on that would go into another area. And so maybe what you do is you decide, okay, I can cut this out of my like month for this month. I've seen people who have gotten a hold of this idea. It's called delayed gratification, right? I think most of us have heard of it. We know what it is. It's that whole like, the experiment where they gave the kids the marshmallow and they walked out of the room and they said, if you don't eat the marshmallow, you'll get two when I come back. And some of the kids were able to not eat the marshmallow, and some of the kids were like, I've got a marshmallow. I'm good. I'm just going to eat this one, you know? And when we are able to delay that gratification a little bit, when we're able to say, okay, I will not spend, $5 every day on coffee. Maybe I'll go once or twice a week to the coffee shop, and the rest of the time I'll make my coffee at home, and I'm going to save a little bit of money that way. And then that money that I'm saving on that stuff, I can put into buying the ingredients for one or two meals extra. And then I can take that money from that. I can buy those meals. I can put those meals in the freezer. And then on a day when I'm tired, I don't have to try to figure out what's for dinner, right? I can just go pull that out, put it in the oven, call it a day. And I can plan those things. So it's great to have them when we absolutely need them, right? We start the day out feeling halfway okay, but then by the end of the day, we're like, okay, no, I can't. And so we have an emergency, whatever, to pull out and do. And that's great. But it's also nice when we can plan everything, right? So maybe and these are all ideas. This is not something I'm telling you to do. These are ideas to get you to start kind of thinking about things, okay? So maybe you have a friend, and so you're like, okay, I know that I need a day off on whatever, I need a day off a week. Maybe your friend is in the same boat and they need a day off too. So maybe you switch childcare, and on your day off, she takes, your kids, and on, her day off, you take her kids. And when you can switch like that, then, you're not making anything cost more money at that point, right? But you're also getting that benefit of like, okay, I have a couple hours kid free. I have a couple hours that I can relax. If I also have a house cleaning schedule that gives me a day off from cleaning, and I schedule that on the same day as I'm also scheduling to take one of these things out of the freezer and make it for dinner, now I've just freed up almost my entire day. You can do these things if you know your cycles, right? If you pay attention to your cycles and how that works, then you know when, okay, like this is something where I'm going to need to, like, I'm going to need some help with this, right? I'm going to need a moment. And when we're getting ourselves ahead in that kind of stuff, we can take a break. That's like a housework one, right? When it comes to business, which is what we're talking about, right? A lot of times, if we like already know you have a schedule, you know how often you're posting. Maybe you're posting twice a week. Maybe you're posting 5 days a week, right? Generally speaking, most people do not post 7 days a week. So you always have one day that you're not posting. And if you need to, you can take that day and make that day the day that, okay, like everything else needs to fall into place so that we can have a full day off, or so that we can do whatever creative stuff we need. If you can lean your creativity into something that works with what you're creating business wise, you can still create for your business that day. You don't have to post, you don't have to do all the work behind it, But maybe I am somebody who is a coach in, even a coach in health and wellness. Okay. If I'm a coach in health and wellness, but I am showing people how part of my way to help myself stay healthy is to take breaks and to be creative. And maybe I'm doing painting or sculpting something, and I set my camera up and I just record like a minute or two of a couple of different times that I'm working on it, right? Couple of different parts of the process. And then I can use those to help bridge it, right? I can bridge that gap of like, okay, this isn't the only thing that I do. This is another side of me. Now you're learning more about me. So you're going to start to learn to trust me more because you know more about me. And then as you know more about me, you're also realizing that, okay, all of these things that this person is saying will help. But if I'm not also adding this into it, at some point, I'm missing the point in all of it, right? At some point, it's not going to be enough. And so that rest is super important. And what are some ways that you can work rest into your business? Can you batch a few posts? Can you make some quote posts and things like that you can have on days when you're just low energy and can't really do the things? You can put those up with a already thought up caption for it so that you've got something to put up, but it's not something where you had to actually really work on it because it was already created. And we can do quote posts quickly. We can do, you can make a couple of carousels out of, just look back at some of your content and look at some of the questions that people are asking you and figure out, okay, like I can do two carousels on the top questions I get asked about this topic or something, right? And use those as filler posts because you're still doing something for business, but you can make those up ahead of time and then put those in when you need to. And if you're making something like that ahead of time, you can make yourself, and this is the coolest thing that I've ever realized. We can make ourselves step by step lists on how to do things and then do them over and over. So maybe I need to do this thing, which is I need to create a carousel on something. And so I have a step by step list, and maybe there's 10 steps in it. And maybe, the first four or five are pretty much thinking, writing stuff down, figuring stuff out. They're not as actively in the creative process, right? So maybe I do two or three of them on one day that are all in the brain stuff, right? Like I'm figuring out my topic, I'm figuring out my points, I'm figuring out like my scheme that I'm going to use for it. And then the next day, I actually go in and pick out all of the slides that I'm going to use and I figure out the wording. And then the next day, maybe I tweak some things, add some pictures to it, or change some stuff. And then I have a carousel post, and then I can, figure out the hashtags, the captions, all of that the next day. And then you have one in 4 days that only took you a few minutes each day to do. And that helped you to batch even when you were still doing other stuff because you just took 10 minutes out of your day to do this one thing. And you could be at the end of the day, right? It's not something where it has to invade everything else. I still do the rest of my work just 10 minutes before I shut down. I work on whatever step I'm doing for that. And if I'm consistently doing that, if I'm keeping up on stuff, if I have a consistent schedule that I like and I'm keeping up on it for a couple weeks, I have two, maybe three posts that I can start plugging in places. And then we just keep going on this cycle, and you kind of always got this backlog of things that you can lean on. Another way to do this is to create, if you're a newsletter, if you have a newsletter or an email list, to start creating series of content where, I'm going to do, this is part one, part two, part three, part four, and you can figure out what all of it is in one thing and then just chunk it down and send one part for 1 week, one part for the next week, one part for the third, one part for the fourth. And yeah, it might seem like you're kind of trickling things to keep people reading. But a lot of times, if you can think about it in this way, our brain sometimes needs to process things before we can move on to the next step anyway. So even though we might feel like we're ready to move and go, if we sit and think about it long enough, we're going to think about different variations. We're going to think about what they really mean, what we're really supposed to be doing in all of this, and that can give us better results in the long run. All right. I'm going to wrap this up today. Let's get this episode wrapped up. See you over there. That was an amazing episode today. I am so glad that y'all were here with me. Tomorrow, we are going to talk all about routines. Make sure you are here. Make sure you are watching. Make sure you are getting in on all of the prompts, all of the things, even if you're just writing them down in your notebook, right? Get involved in this because I am giving you the steps so that we can build the foundation in the first 3 months. And then we're going to start really adding to our dream lives. And by the end of 2026, people are just going to be like jaw on the floor at how different our lives are. All right, guys, I will see y'all tomorrow. Have a good one.